Cool. Well, good evening, community leaders. Good to be with you. This is the second of our video series in this larger series called Family Ties. And we did deviate a little bit on Sunday because obviously we had Dennis Lutz, the pastor of the International Church in China. He hosted our team when we were over there at the end of April. And as he shared on Sunday, he kind of got saved in this church, he got married in this church, and so it was a great privilege to be able to host him, and obviously for him to have kind of come full circle in his kind of ministry career. So he spoke on delighting ourselves in the Lord, and while I was listening on Sunday morning, I thought I'd actually like to pick up on it slightly differently, but around the same theme on Sunday night, and for our purposes this week in community, to also kind of look at this theme of delighting ourselves in the Lord, and particularly looking tonight at some practical ways in which we can actually do that. And so let me just remind you of what he read on, the passage he read on Sunday morning. I picked up again on Sunday night. It's in Psalm 37, and it says this: "Do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong. But like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture." And this is the key verse. "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." So what does it mean then to delight ourselves in the Lord? Because we can talk around these concepts. I mean, a similar scripture, for example, is rejoice in the Lord always, Paul writes. And he says, again, I say, rejoice. In the good times and the bad times, rejoice in the Lord. But, you know, when we look at our lives, we're probably not doing that well. We can so easily get down. We wonder where God is in a circumstance. We wonder why he's not answering our prayers. When we look at our spiritual lives, I guess most of us, we probably kind of go up and down. And when there's an answer to prayer, it's like, woohoo, Lord, I love you, I worship you, can't wait to have a quiet time. And then when we feel like we're going through a slump and we're wondering where God is, it's really difficult to rejoice in the Lord always. It's really difficult for us to delight ourselves in the Lord. I think it's a real issue for most Christians. I think it's a real issue because we feel like we should be doing this, but we're kind of not. And so there's this disconnect in our spiritual experience that leaves us frustrated, leaves us wondering, is there something more that we're kind of missing? And as in life, I think it's true in our spiritual journeys as well. There's no one quick fix solution that if we just did this, everything would come right. I think Dave Est, in his testimony on Sunday night, really summed up the struggle for a lot of Christians. And he said, for many, many years he had been a Christian. Many years he could look back. He knew the Bible. He'd been in church. He'd seen God do amazing things in him and around him in his spiritual journey. But when he looked, he felt he hadn't really changed that much. I think a lot of us as Christians may look back on our spiritual journey and go, I don't really know if I've actually changed that much. And so in Dave's account, coming back to Port Elizabeth, and it had begun even when they were still in Joburg, just really started to seek the Lord. And the promise of the Lord is this, that when we seek him, ultimately we're going to find him. And that's culminated in a number of significant moments in Dave's life, attending New Creations and really just the revelation that came to him in doing that course. And then as he relayed on Sunday, this incredible God moment. It was just a fleeting moment, but left an incredible impact on his life, on his spiritual journey. So I think a lot of us can relate. And the challenge then is, how do we then delight in the Lord? I mean, we talk about seeking the Lord. We talk about loving the Lord with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Delighting ourselves in the Lord, rejoicing in the Lord. I think they're kind of they're all similar. They're all kind of saying the same thing. And it really is about loving the Lord and enjoying him as number one in our lives. As I looked at these different references, that really is what kind of comes out. That's the common thread of loving the Lord, not in God, I've got to love the Lord today, I've kind of got to pray, but actually a love that flows in an enjoyment, a delight, a rejoicing in my relationship with the Lord and putting him first in my life. What we're going to focus on tonight in community is then, how do we do that? How do we practically do that? And I want to just offer a few suggestions and then just leave you with maybe a challenge for you to do corporately together in your group. And so a couple of thoughts I thought of interesting things that people have done. So for me, for example, for many years, I found it easier to have my quiet time at night. And it's quiet, and Ross was doing his homework, and Kim might be doing something, watching TV or so, and I could just slip out, and I enjoy going for a walk and just being able to talk with the Lord. And probably about 2 years ago, it just got too busy. I just had too many evening meetings, and I decided to shift to the morning, get up earlier than normal, and just spend some time with the Lord. And what I found was that starting my day with the Lord, and I don't think that there's a better or worse time of the day, or right or wrong time of the day to have your quiet time, but I just found starting the day with the Lord, just starting in worship, thanking God for this new day, committing my day to Him, actually became an expression of a much larger thing that we're talking about. I found myself delighting myself in the Lord at the beginning of the day. I wasn't saying that in my head, but actually when I think back now, and I connect from Sunday's message, I think that's what I've been doing. It was a subtle difference, but it actually was quite a significant difference in my spiritual journey. I was still spending time with the Lord. I was still spending as much time with the Lord. It was just in spending that time at the beginning of the day, just shifted something for me that I wasn't even aware of. But it just meant that I was starting my day on a footing with the Lord, if you like. Made a big difference in my spiritual experience. Bill Johnson, for example, I heard him say once that what he does is he enjoys at the end of the day. He makes sure that he doesn't wait until he's dog-tired before he gets into bed. And he kind of has a more or less time in the evening when he goes off to bed. And what he likes to do is he likes to just lie in bed. And what he does, he goes over the day. And he just reflects on the moments, the people that he experienced, and maybe just the little God encounters through the day that he might have otherwise missed. Just reflects on that. And then he said this that really caught my attention. He does that as an act of worship and gratitude. And then he said, what I like to do is I like to fall asleep with God in my mind. I mean, how's that? And I think that, in his way, is delighting himself in the Lord. It's different to how I'm delighting myself in the Lord. But in his way, that's what he's doing. Some of you might be familiar with a Christian classic called Practice in the Presence of God. And it was written by a monk by the name of Brother Lawrence. It was written in the Middle Ages and has found its way into kind of classical Christian literature. Brother Lawrence was just an ordinary little monk that gave his life to join a monastery. But he didn't end up doing all the fasting and praying and the yearing God that all the chief monks or that did. He ended up in the kitchen, washing dishes. That was his lot. He was like the dishwasher, and he so desperately wanted to connect with God, and he realized he was never going to get out of there. That was what he did in the monastery, and he realized that in that space, he could still connect with God. And so he wrote this book based on his experience of learning how to worship God, find God in washing dishes, and singing songs of praise, and just as he was going on about his daily business, becoming aware of and conscious of God throughout his daily activities, mundane as they were. And that book really challenged me when I read it, and it's a Christian classic. You could probably get it online in PDF form and just read it. It's really inspiring. And so we can practice this delighting in the Lord in so many ways. Dennis Lutz on Sunday morning said what he likes to do every day is he likes to read a psalm. Just likes to read a psalm and tap into David's heart, because David, we know, was a man after God's own heart. And so Dennis Lutz, as a daily habit, reads a psalm. Maybe a psalm or two, just to catch that heart after God's own heart. In that way, in his way, that is him delighting in the Lord, putting God first and enjoying God. So what we're going to do tonight in our community groups is two things. One, maybe you want to share how I've shared my story, Bill Johnson shared his. Maybe you want to share your story of how you find you're able to put God first, how you're able to delight in God in the busyness of all of our lives and your daily routine. What have you found that works for you? Because it might be an encouragement to somebody else. And the second thing that I'd like us to do is take Psalm 103. It's a classic psalm. It's a great psalm. We all know it well. But maybe you want to take Psalm 103 as a group and just read through it tonight. Just read through it verse by verse. And every verse is kind of packed with a response where we can say, that is incredible. Maybe as you read through the verses, somebody has a comment on that and say, that verse in Psalm 103 has meant this to me. Or it meant that to me at that specific time in my life. And it just encouraged me or challenged me. It kept me grounded. It was such a meaningful verse through this experience that I had. So let's take this time to kind of just share around how we can practically do this this concept of rejoicing in the Lord always, delighting in the Lord as first and foremost. God bless you as you do that tonight.